Look away from the screen for just 1 second. Try to remember the last time you sat in complete silence. No glowing screen, no notifications, no endless scrolling. For most people, that memory is fading. Something unusual is happening to human attention, and you are participating in it right now. We call it brain rot, a cultural joke about our shrinking attention spans. At first, the explanation seemed obvious. We assumed it was just a bad habit, a temporary byproduct of boredom. But when researchers began looking closer, they noticed something they weren't expecting. The evidence pointed toward something deeper than mere distraction. When scientists looked inside the brains of heavy short-form video users, they expected to find temporary chemical imbalances, perhaps simple mental fatigue. Instead, a second clue emerged. The scans revealed measurable structural differences, differences that researchers are still trying to fully understand. And that was only the beginning. The first major difference appeared just above the eyes, a region of the brain involved in evaluating rewards. Every new piece of content carries the possibility of a reward. Something funny, something shocking, something unexpected. And that anticipation is closely linked to dopamine signaling in the brain. Then researchers found something they weren't expecting. Certain reward-related regions didn't look quite the same. Differences appeared in areas involved in reward processing. Exactly why remains unclear. Researchers are still debating what these differences mean. But the finding raised an uncomfortable possibility. What if constant exposure to rapid stimulation was changing what the brain learns to value? This observation raised an uncomfortable question. If one part of the brain was showing differences, what was happening to the rest of it? That led scientists to a third clue. Deep inside the mind is a network of communication pathways. These pathways help regulate impulses and maintain focus. When researchers examined these pathways, known as white matter, they found something concerning. Some studies have reported differences in white matter integrity among heavy users, though researchers are still debating the causes and long-term significance. Researchers have wondered whether these differences could help explain experiences many people report: opening a phone for a specific purpose, then becoming absorbed far longer than intended. These patterns are becoming increasingly noticeable in the real world. People aren't just losing focus. They are forgetting why they entered rooms, starting tasks and abandoning them moments later. At first, researchers didn't know what to call it. People weren't forgetting facts. They were forgetting intentions. Eventually, neuroscientists gave this pattern a name: a disruption in prospective memory. This is the ability to hold on to a future intention while doing something else. Some researchers suspect that rapidly switching between unrelated pieces of information may place unusual demands on systems involved in maintaining intentions and goals. You aren't just forgetting trivia. Over time, this pattern may encourage a habit of constantly shifting attention from one thought to another. Then, an even stranger detail emerged. When some users were placed in an empty room with no screens, their reactions were unusual. Researchers observed that periods without stimulation could feel surprisingly uncomfortable for some participants. In some experiments, participants reported unusually high levels of discomfort when left alone with their thoughts. Boredom was no longer a state of rest. It was something to escape. At that point, researchers faced a difficult question. If these patterns are appearing across millions of people at the same time, are we witnessing isolated behavioral changes, or the beginning of a larger shift in how attention itself is trained? At that point, a larger picture began to emerge. The brain becomes what it repeatedly practices. For most of human history, our attention patterns were shaped by nature, work, and survival. Today, these systems increasingly influence the environments in which our attention develops. Researchers are still debating the long-term consequences. Will we still possess the patience to read a dense book? To sit alone and build a complex idea from scratch? We don't have the answers yet. The question is no longer whether technology influences attention. The question is how far that influence can go. The next time you reach for your screen, ask yourself, are you choosing what deserves your attention? Or is something else helping make that decision? The brain becomes what it repeatedly practices, And every day, billions of people are practicing something. The only question is, what are we training ourselves to become?